Roy Hill, it is so great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for joining District of Conservation. How are things?
Well, things are great, and thanks, Gabriella, for having me on the show. It's been a long time since I got to see you in person.
I know it has been a while. I think it was POMA of 2019, and COVID curtailed our efforts to all get together last.
Yeah, that was POMA. Yep. And before that, it was the rally in DC. So.
Yeah. I think after it was the rally in DC afterwards.
Okay.
After POMA.
Right.
Yeah.
That was October.
A year. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's been such a long time.
Way too long.
Yes. But why don't you tell my listeners who you are and what you do at Brownells, and what is Brownells too?
Sure. My name is Roy Hill. My official title at Brownells is Public Relations Specialist 2, although I wear a whole lot of different hats. I wind up doing a lot of different things, which keeps the job interesting. I've been in the firearms industry about 9 years. In fact, my hire date at Brownells will be January 12th. So in about 8 days, it'll be my 9th year with the company. I have an unusual track for getting into the gun industry. There are not a lot of people who followed the same twisted, torturous path that I followed because I was kind of sort of a college English instructor for about 18 years before I got hired at Brownells. I was a college English instructor. I was a journalism instructor. I also advised student newspapers on 2 different campuses. And before that, I've pretty much been either a full-time or a freelance journalist since about 1994 or so, if you count my time with the Arkansas Traveler at the University of Arkansas. But my first official full-time job beyond the University of Arkansas was as a daily sports reporter for a little paper called the Benton County Daily Record. So I was a college English instructor. Some things happened to convince me, maybe as the gun guy in a liberal arts faculty, I was kind of the proverbial square peg in the round hole. I'll just leave it at that. And I had to find a way to come be among my people. So I started applying for every single gun-related job I could find, and this is the one that hit.
That makes sense. And I think I was initially mistaken that Brownells makes firearms. Could you explain what you guys exactly do?
Well, we kind of sort of do now. Brownells, in fact, on my Brownells flag here, it says serious about firearms since 1939. If you check out Brownells.com, you'll see that's our official motto. Brownells has been in business since 1939. We originally started as a gunsmith supply house. I'll tell you more of the story of the origin of Brownells later, if you like. But over the years, we have expanded into more and more firearms related products. When I first started, one of the taglines I helped come up with was, if it goes in a gun, on a gun, through a gun goes in it, we've got it. And a few years later, we could add, if it is a gun. So we sell both other manufacturers' firearms on our website. Firearms is actually now a major product category at Brownells.com. We have approximately 5,000 different models listed on the site, but of course, right now we're in the midst of unprecedented gun industry product demand levels. So we don't have 5,000 models of guns in stock. In fact, I kind of play a little game and get on the website and say, well, how few do we have in stock today? Because people have been buying absolutely everything. But a couple of years ago at SHOT Show, we actually came out for the first time in our now over 80-year history as a firearms manufacturer. Now the rifles, they were called the retro rifles. They were cosmetically correct copies of significant AR-15 designs. We had such things. My favorite one was the green furnitured Colt 601, which was a cosmetic copy of the very first AR-15 style rifle adopted into U.S. military service by the Air Force. Air Force security, the Air Base security personnel, Curtis LeMay, and the famous story about Curtis at the 4th of July picnic with one of his new whiz-bang rifles and a bunch of watermelons is what convinced Air Force generals they needed those rifles for their security personnel at their air bases. But we had several different models, and even though we don't actually build them here, we're the manufacturer legally of record. So all the receivers, they'll say Brownells, and our current location's in Grinnell, Iowa, but where our FFL is located for manufacturing purposes is in Montezuma. So on the receiver, they all say Brownells, Montezuma, Iowa. So we actually are technically a gun maker. But it took us years and years to get that. Other than that, we sell anything you can imagine related to firearms, down to the individual springs, to gunsmithing tools, to chemicals, to magazines, to gun cases, to reloading supplies, to ammo. That's another current sore spot in the industry is ammo. And we even have a line of what we call our ESG, or emergency survival gear, where you can get things like water purifiers, long-term storage food, fire starters, things of that nature.
Yeah, you guys cover the gamut of different products, which was very informative to me because I know you guys were specializing in certain sectors of the industry, but it's good that you've expanded recently, and I have a clarity of that. I should know this.
And this is one thing we were actively working. I mean, we're very, very proud that we were known as a gunsmith supply house for about 65, 70 years. And we'll always, always supply the gunsmith customers, but we're really working pretty hard to try to tell folks, hey folks, we do more than just like 1911 trigger job sear jigs, right? We do more than woodworking files. We got all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and it goes to show that you guys have the name, obviously, and I think you're one of the most highly engaged firearms brands in the country. One of the top. I mean, I see it from social media. A lot of people engage with Brownells. You guys had your YouTube channel taken off a few years ago, then reinstated. So people, guys, you're a household name, and what do you think is the secret to people catching on to Brownells and taking what you're offering to be of interest? Why do you think you guys have such a good reception in the industry?
Oh, all sorts of factors. One of the people I really want to give a shout out to here is our brand engagement manager, Josh Coburn. He runs our social media, Instagram especially, Instagram, Facebook. We have a photo video team, of course, that produces in-house content for the YouTube channel, and we're all the time looking for new ideas there. But Josh is really, really great at what he does. I'm fortunate I work on a really great team here in Brownells. We're all in alignment. We all, I think, understand the value of things like social media, and we work real hard to try to find ways to work in that world and work with people in that world, like we're doing right now with the podcast.
Yeah, it's smart because I think a lot of people across different industries, even including the outdoor industry, were very reluctant to embrace digital media. We've talked about this at POMA many times. And
oh, yes, I've been there and heard that. Yes,
we were there, and then I think we talked about it at SHOT Show when we first met in, I think it was early 2019, and other instances. Like, the greater conversation is, why aren't people getting with the times and doing digital work? And thankfully we've seen an avalanche of people now doing that, different brands, individuals, because they recognize that you can market and you can't sell products necessarily. You can use in marketing to bypass the channels, but yeah, it's an effective tool, good and bad with it.
And I think there's some organic things in the firearms industry, especially, that just make it a lot tougher. Like you said, we can't actually sell product. We can't have links to product for sale on social media because we have evil gun things. Oh my gosh, not that, right? It's just constitutionally protected, guaranteed right. That's all. But it's icky, evil gun stuff, so we can't. Also, the gun industry, one of the things that we have to work under is the Gun Control Act of 1968. So a whole lot of ways of doing things in the gun industry were effectively, in some ways, kind of frozen in the year 1968 with the implementation of the Federal Gun Control Act of 1968. For example, there's still a whole real big emphasis in the gun industry on brick and mortar retail locations because of the way the federal laws are written, because you have to have an FFL licensed premises to be able to legally sell guns. So this brings up a chance. There's something I just want to hit real quick, especially for folks who may not be familiar with it, because they hear about online gun sales. Online gun sales are only kind of sort of online. It is pretty much impossible for someone to say, hey, I want that AR-15 I see on Brownells.com, and order it, and it cannot ship to your house. You can order it, and it will ship to a federal firearms licensed business, an FFL, federal firearms licensee, I think is the correct term. In the industry, we call it an FFL, and that's a licensed gun store. So it has to ship to an actual physical retail outlet that has all the necessary federal paperwork, a federal firearms license. And then the customer still has to go to the gun dealer. Typically, there's what's called a transfer fee, because the gun dealer will receive the gun legally for you. then you have to pay, it's usually like between 25 and 50 bucks. It depends on the location in the gun store, and it's all sorts of things. You pay a little fee, and then you have to fill out your form 4473 and undergo the National Instant Check System, FBI background check. So it's sort of, you can buy guns online, but the guns will ship to a licensed FFL in your location. Now, Brownells tries to make that as easy as possible, because for every single gun for sale on our website, there's a little blank on the website where you enter your zip code. First of all, you can find out if the gun is legal for purchase in your area. Unfortunately, there's some states, I won't name any of them, but who have passed crazy laws restricting magazine capacity or outright banning certain models of guns. So you enter your little zip code, and then find FFL dealer. There's another button, and you click on it, and a little map will pop up around your zip code showing all the FFLs. And if they're marked in red on our website, they're what we call a featured dealer. So they've already gotten a written agreement from us to receive guns on behalf of customers. So we make it as simple and as streamlined as possible. So you can sort of buy guns on the internet, but they all have to ship to a federal firearms licensee, and you still have to undergo the background check.
Yeah, and that goes into the greater conversation of like the gun show loophole, how
yeah, and there's no such thing. Yeah.
It's very the DOJ, you probably saw the study from early 2019, found that criminals don't use the so-called gun show loophole or private sales much. They usually buy them off the street illegally.
Off the street, that they're already stolen, or they steal them themselves. Yeah.
They take these rare instances of gun purchases and they try to generalize them and make them kind of a commonality. But speaking of gun purchases, I think the industry was really thrilled to see, and not so much for their bottom line, but I think from a purchasing standpoint, but also from a kind of empowerment standpoint, the industry saw, 10 million new gun owners last year?
It's up to 10. The last, I'm not surprised. The last article I saw was projecting 8. So I'm not surprised if it's 10. Absolutely not surprised. And like you said, on the one hand, we're very, those of us in the industry, and I'm speaking for me, I'm speaking for Roy Hill. I work at Brownells. I'm not necessarily, but I work at Brownells. So I'll speak for Roy Hill. I'm personally thrilled to see that many Americans come to the realization that, hey, the only person who's going to take care of me is me. There's a lot of that at work. I'm not happy about the reasons why that happened, because and our big boss, Pete Brownell's been on Fox Business a couple of times, so some of y'all may have seen that. But we started seeing the sales spikes in March, about third week of March, and that was with the COVID lockdowns. Because at the same time that COVID lockdowns were going into effect, you had certain stories of certain major metropolitan areas were issuing statements that unless it was like a murder call or something like that, the police just weren't going to respond. And also we had other big cities announcing, hey, we're going to let all the guys in jail awaiting trial, we're going to let them out because of COVID concerns. So you had the double whammy of police announcements that police departments just weren't going to respond to certain types of calls. And oh yeah, we're going to let a lot of guys with pending charges out too. That caused the light bulb to come on for lots of Americans, millions of Americans, that, oh, I may have to be my own first responder if something bad happens. And the fire was already raging. And then when more and more people got that lesson, as they saw into the summer of the civil unrest and the unfortunate scenes of parts of major downtowns being burned and looted and rioting going on, more and more people had that light bulb moment that, oh, I may be on my own and something really bad might happen.
Yeah, but something I wanted to ask you was, it's interesting, we saw this surge of gun ownership, but it didn't necessarily translate politically. Why do you think that is?
A whole variety of reasons, And again, I come from a background where I would be not necessarily politically aligned with lots of the folks I used to work with in higher education. I'll just point at that. And I knew lots of folks who voted a certain way, who still owned guns, who still wanted, hey, I want to be able to protect myself. And a lot of times there's this disconnect between, oh, I need to be able to take care of me, but I'm going to vote for politicians who are in probably pass and be in favor of certain policies that will take away certain things from me. And a lot of times there's just this disconnect. I've personally witnessed it more than once, where a person who votes, I'll just go ahead and say Democrat, is shocked and horrified to find out that, oh, living in this state, you mean I can't have a regular magazine? Oh, when did we do that? Well, funny you should ask. You know those candidates y'all keep voting for? Yeah, they voted to ban your magazines. I mean, I'm not kidding. I've had that very conversation more than once.
Yeah, but I mean, we see a lot of Democrats now actually buying guns, interestingly enough. And
right, interestingly enough.
You should totally buy guns. I think everyone should. I like that.
Second Amendment's for everybody.
It's wonderful. I hope they start to recognize, though, politically speaking, they have to vote for pro-gun candidates or candidates who necessarily won't infringe on their right to own guns. But it's so interesting just to note that disconnect. And I don't know if it can be quantified, perhaps, because we see in House races, that wasn't necessarily the case. We kind of saw an opposite effect. Not a complete over gun candidates, but we saw people do better. In the House, we didn't win the presidency. And in the Senate, like you said, it remains to be seen. As this comes out, this will come out tomorrow or the day of the election.
The Georgia runoff, right.
It'll remain to be seen, once this comes out tomorrow or the day of the Georgia runoff, if we get to maintain a pro-gun Senate majority. But yeah, there is kind of a disconnect, but not entirely. I think people have a heightened sense of awareness as to the need to protect and the need to not elect lawmakers, but see if you can kind of quantify gun ownership and how it translates to political voting habits. But that'd probably be something in the future that people will kind of demand and want to do. But perhaps the industry is going to have to wrestle with, and companies like yours have to wrestle with, well, how can we obviously promote our business? How can we function as a business? Yet a lot of people who start to buy guns don't necessarily understand what they're doing, perhaps people to vote against their interests, vote against their ability for
their ability to own those certain types of guns and magazines. And I want to make it real clear. I mean, the Second Amendment is for everybody in the United States, regardless of your political affiliation. It is so, personally to me, maddening and unfortunate that something like the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms for your personal and also the national defense, has been so politicized. But I mean, the truth is it has, there's no way around it. It makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. I don't get it. And we're absolutely in favor of everybody, regardless of political affiliation, exercising your constitutionally guaranteed right to keep and bear arms. Absolutely in favor of that. I'll just also say that even on, if you will say, the folks who are pro-gun, I see sometimes disconnects there. And I'm not necessarily voting patterns. It's that they just won't pay attention to politics, and then some sort of ban or restriction gets passed, and they'll go, when did that happen? Okay, right. What do you mean I can't order ammo to my house anymore, right? I've heard that. You cannot believe, and this is something, Second Amendment activism was something I was absolutely involved in way before I ever got to Brownells. I got to Brownells because of my Second Amendment beliefs and stances. Because I had to get in the gun industry. But I think I took my first public stand in favor of the Second Amendment. I think her name was Mrs. Sloan's sixth grade social studies class. So that would have been like 1981, if you want to really date me. But yeah, on both sides of the political spectrum, I just see disconnects, and I hope, and I think the sales numbers are reflecting this. More and more people are having their aha moment, and more people are finding out, oh, I might actually need a firearm. I might need to be able to defend myself. And then in my also personal experience, the more folks who go out and exercise that, learn how to shoot, and it is actually a very powerful, empowering experience many times.
It is, and once you partake in it directly, you have a change of heart. I wasn't really opposed to guns, but I just never had the experience in my personal
life. And I was going to bring that up because you're relatively, is like 4 or 5 years now for you?
More seriously, but I picked up my first gun about 10 years ago, but I got really into it about 8, 7, and then like super serious like 5, 6 years ago. Yeah.
What was the first gun you shot?
Oh gosh, I do not recall the prototype. It was a handgun, and then there was a hunting rifle.
Okay.
Do not recall the makes, but I got to shoot both a shotgun and then also a handgun. So that was really interesting. That was before I knew how to grip properly. That was before I knew certain stances, breathing techniques. But, you know, for me, it was fun. We shot in like the mountains of San Bernardino. I don't know if it was legal, but we didn't do anything wrong. Nobody, it was public land hunting, shooting experience.
Right, right. If it's BLM, I mean, there was a statement from the BLM about target shooting on BLM land as being a longstanding tradition. I mean, I'm absolutely all in favor of that. I just hope everybody who does that remembers to pick up their empties and use a biodegradable targets and/or pack their trash out.
Absolutely. Back to kind of the policy angle. You guys are really outspoken against the recent proposed ATF rule to ban pistol grips for AR models. And you've kind of sounded the alarm for other different measures. And I understand with the incoming new administration coming in, which is seen as very hostile to gun rights. I know Biden wants to tax a lot of gun parts. He wants to and a lot of modern ARs. So they're going to use, if he doesn't get control of the Senate, the Democrats don't get control of the Senate, he's going to use these other mechanisms through taxation to prohibit a lot of commonly used gun parts. But speaking back more so to the ATF piece, why did you guys oppose that? And what was the importance of doing that? And the victory that resulted with a lot of people commenting?
As I understand the reclassification effort, and I read it several times, and Brownells did make some social media posts, and lots of folks we work with, and they put out some rather vague, nebulous characteristics and said it would depend on the caliber, it would depend on things such as a vertical foregrip or not, it might depend on what type of optic or sight was put on it, et cetera, et cetera. Braces themselves, the whole point of the brace, it was originally developed as an aid to help a disabled combat vet still be able to shoot an AR-15 style pistol. And they look kind of like stocks, but the ATF has ruled several times they are not stocks. Braces have been around, about 8 years now. There's been several cases of folks writing to the ATF for a letter, hey, are these things actually okay? The ATF saying, yeah, sure, they're okay. And then there was, a few years ago, there was the statement by the ATF that, yeah, you can have a stock, but if you shoulder it, if you put it in your shoulder, that you may be redesigning your pistol into a short-barreled rifle. There's all sorts of things. The problem would be twofold, at least. Number one, over the last 8 years when the ATF first said, hey, braces are perfectly fine, there are literally millions of brace-equipped pistols in private ownership in the United States. They are cool. I have one. I built one, and I built a 9mm AR-15 pistol for a series of articles at Brownells' website and actually put a brace on it. I love it. It's awesome. So the first problem is there are literally millions, and by this just reclassifying and saying, hey, we used to interpret this regulation this way, but now we're going to interpret this way, and never mind what we said for 8 years, there was the potential to turn millions of Americans who've never done anything wrong into instant felons overnight because of doing something that they were told was okay to do. There was that. The reason there are millions upon millions of Americans who own braced pistols is because there are companies that employ hundreds of people who are now in existence that didn't exist 10 years ago. And this is what they do. They make braces. I was clicking off, when we were going through this, I was clicking off a list in my head of all the major manufacturing companies who now sell firearms that come standard equipped with a brace from the factory. So there would be overwhelming economic impact, and there would be for the firearms industry, and then there would be overwhelming legal implication for literally millions of Americans who were following what they were told was okay to do for about 8 years, and all of a sudden they were going to be told, well, maybe that's not okay.
Interesting. And more broadly speaking, how do you think the firearms industry is gripping with this new administration? Obviously, I kind of alluded to kind of the taxation element. Are you guys worried about the business model being affected? I know a lot of people worry. I mean, it's already hard with Corona.
Well, yeah, we already have. I mean, we have to pay attention to politics in the firearms industry. There's no other way around it. The Second Amendment absolutely should not be a political issue. It should not be politicized. Unfortunately, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And politics absolutely certainly affects what the firearms industry does, down to even what state you can sell a certain accessory to or not, or where can you ship this magazine, but this other magazine's okay, but this gun's okay, but this gun that looks just like it is not okay. There's a myriad of laws and things, and they are absolutely influenced by politics. So we're keeping a very close eye. Right now, the inauguration is 16 days away, 2 weeks away.
Or take. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure all firearms companies have made contingency plans if A happens, if B happens, and then we've got our C plan for things we can't even think of yet. I'm sure that the industry companies have made their plans, and we're all just kind of, I would guess, just kind of in a wait and see mode to see what actually happens. So obviously we're going to keep a close eye on it. We're going to stay as informed as we can. We're going to communicate with each other and with our customers. And all we can do right now is just kind of wait and see what happens.
Right. But can't it be argued that actually a anti-gun or very pro-gun control president is actually good for business? Could that be seen? Because
well, yeah. I mean, you can find snarky jokes on the internet about Obama being the gun salesman of the year for about 8 years. Absolutely, that does happen in the industry. I mean, you're going to see the pressure of a potential anti-gun administration is going to be the napalm on top of the gasoline on top of the fire. And I don't think the ammunition situation, for example, is going to get any better anytime soon, just because I think demand will go even higher once, say, it looks like Biden's going to be inaugurated. I don't think there's any way that doesn't happen now. Once that happens and people are saying, "Oh, this happened," dude's in the office, I think you might see demand go even higher.
Yeah, because in previous years, that's usually the maxim that a lot of us abide by. Like when a Democrat, usually who is anti-gun, is in charge, we see sales skyrocket. But it was kind of an anomaly last year because we have a generally friendly pro-gun administration.
Right.
Right. We saw all these different records shattered in terms of purchases and different things that happened. So it was kind of an off year with that, but I can imagine demand for ammo, guns, etc., will be very, very high going into.
Oh yes. But even when you're talking about 2020, and then there are folks who would say, yeah, maybe Trump wasn't necessarily pro-gun, but maybe he wasn't just virulently anti-gun. And I don't want to get into all the controversies with the bump stock, et cetera, et cetera. That's a whole other podcast. But in 2019, things were kind of flat across the industry. Things were kind of flat. There was no sense of, oh my gosh, things might get banned, and things would have continued to be flat. And I already said this before, and we sold a lot of stuff. We're not necessarily happy with the reasons why, because nobody predicted a pandemic called COVID-19 and the subsequent shutdowns and the issues with police response and releasing prisoners. And sure as heck, nobody in summer of 2019 could look in the crystal ball and say, oh yes, parts of Minneapolis will be burned to the ground in summer of 2020. Those were just things beyond anybody's ability to predict or see that were absolutely market forces for the firearms industry.
Yeah, and certainly it'll be interesting to note like how the industry at large will be able to keep up with demand, because I haven't even given thought to replenishing my ammo supply. I still have a little canister, so I'm like holding and clinging onto it as time. Right. Because I have very few left, but I found like some people I know have found like stashes. I'm like, where are you finding this? But they're paying way too much for an individual bullet.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's right. That's supply and demand. That's what I work in the industry and I can't get ammo. Okay? I can't get ammo.
Right. Yeah, it's so confounding, but so interesting. But I hope, and I think what the takeaway from all this is, like with people purchasing, I hope they are getting properly educated and learning how to handle, which is something the industry teaches at large. Obviously, you do. NSSF, the trade association, is really keen on that. And that's something people have to reinforce and have reinforced when they're purchasing guns. They have to recognize it's not a little play thing. It's a very important
serious tool that you have to have proper training to make sure you don't hurt yourself or somebody you care about. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a last don't want to use it aimlessly or recklessly. And I mean, I think people forget, kind of lost in the conversation, is the conservation piece. And that's why I don't shy away from talking about firearms, because people
Right.
forget that excise taxes collected on guns and ammunition.
Pittman-Robertson Act. Yes.
Do you guys focus on that component, and maybe you could speak to it individually, why it's so important, and people forget that that's kind of an unintended but kind of intended consequence of gun control policy?
Right. And after I kind of talk about this, I want to come back to, you got your first deer this year. I want to hear about that.
Yes.
Well, I'll go ahead and talk about Pittman-Robertson Act for folks who don't know. Was it in the 30s, or is it 1947? Is that the date sticking in my head?
37.
37.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was an act passed by Congress, signed by the then president, that established an excise tax on all guns and ammo sold inside the United States that would be dedicated to wildlife conservation efforts.
Mm-hmm.
With the thinking that the folks who guns are often used in hunting, and it's even guns that, I mean, your 380 automatic pocket pistol is probably not going to be used for hunting, although in some states it is legal, depending on the game. There's excise tax on that 380 automatic pocket pistol that gets sent to Pittman-Robertson. And if you don't know, a key phrase to Google would be of the American model of wildlife conservation, considering wildlife and wild places to be resources, to be conserved, not preserved, not walled off and allowed to exist unmolested, but to be managed for the benefit and enjoyment of Americans. And this is why you have things like state wildlife agencies or federal wildlife agencies, and efforts to buy property to put into wildlife habitat, or to maintain and take care of wildlife habitat, or to help with the recovery of different species. I mean, I'm originally from Arkansas, and black bears were considered pretty much officially extirpated from the state when I was a very young boy, even though I knew better. That's a story for another. I don't want to steal Thorpe's The Big Bear of Arkansas, which I used to teach in class, but yeah, check out that story. It's great. But black bears were considered pretty much officially extirpated from the state. And because of the dollars available and the resources available for wildlife conservation, the black bear was reintroduced, to the point for like the last 20, 30, probably like 30 years, there's been a huntable population of black bears in Arkansas. In fact, where I grew up in Arkansas has some of the biggest, meanest, nastiest black bears you can find in continental United States. And it's the black bear reintroduction into the state of Arkansas is always touted as one of the single best reintroductions of a large predatory animal back into its original range ever in the history of conservation. And that was made possible by the billions of dollars created by the Pittman-Robertson Act, excise tax on guns and ammo.
Yeah, and it's because there was too much of market game hunting at the turn of the 20th century. And it was hunters who recognized that if they harvest more than their lot, there won't be
any more.
Yeah, which would be very counterintuitive. And it makes no sense to eliminate everything and just and have about it from kind of a commerce angle. And that's why we don't see the selling of wild game meat through stores.
Right.
I think you can bypass that through farms, but it's a Lacey Act of 1900 to sell wild game meat, and don't sell it because you'll get in trouble under the
act. Don't, it's federal, right?
So you have to give it away for free if you do gift it. But somehow farms are able to bypass it and somehow sell it through, I think where is it? There's a local Harris Teeter. Somehow you can buy like bison meat and
elk and things like that. Yeah.
They find a loophole through kind of the farming aspect. But yeah, I think it's really ridiculous that people think hunters want to eliminate it. And it's not simply because we want to eliminate or get rid of and have this kind of like bloodlust desire to go after animals. We like admiring them too. Anytime I see deer, for instance, over the weekend, I saw 3 incredible bucks on the George Washington Parkway.
Right.
And obviously they were in an area you couldn't really target them. They were kind of like visibly on the hiking path, and I was driving and I saw them, and they're very clever. They know where to hide. I only see a doe and her 2 fawns come into my backyard, and it's an archery zone. You can't hunt with rifle in my part of the county, but you can still admire and see these incredible creatures for yourself. In addition to, wanting to pursue them when the season allots you to do so.
They taste great grilled with mushrooms. Yes.
I know firsthand from getting my own deer.
Right.
But
yeah, how did you get into hunting, and tell me about your first deer?
well, because of a lot of you in the industry, you guys kind of pushed me in this direction. I would say it was like Jana Waller, Christy Titus, and a few others who really did kind of tell me and give me the confidence that like I could do this. And I would interview them or meet with them and talk to them, and they'd say, yeah, you could do this. Like, it's not a hard problem. Also, Cyrus Baird from Safari Club was a really big influencer me in that respect, and he took me on a few hunts, and I've gone with a few friends here in Virginia for duck hunting, turkey hunting, pheasant hunting, all that jazz. And yeah, I just have an interest in it because wild game meat is delicious. I love exotic meats. You know, my family background, we love to eat in Eastern Europe all these different cool cuts of meat. I've had bear sausage before,
right?
Eating cow tongue, so it wasn't unusual for me to kind of experiment with wild game.
Right.
But kind of more broadly speaking, yeah, it's a really good thing. And when I can't do fishing and hunting allows, I want to be able to do it as well, just to kind of get the well-roundedness, to go hiking, to surround myself in nature, have the camaraderie with other hunters, and also, if I'm lucky, get the ultimate prize in some delicious free range, wild game meat. And
right. But you got your whitetail in Wyoming. Have you eaten part of it yet?
Already, yeah. My dad was able to experiment with it. He did a bacon wrapped venison roast, which turned out delicious. And we've done a little bit of cooking, and then I gave one. I gifted a roast to one of my friends. He seared it, and we ate it at his place in DC. So I like collaboratively, I've cooked it, and then I'm going to hopefully do the undertaking of making jerky with it very soon.
Oh, cool. And how much better does it taste when you take that first bite of the steak or whatever that you didn't go down to the grocery store and bought, that you worked your rear end off out there in Wyoming to track and find and make the shot, et cetera? How much better does it taste?
A lot more rewarding. And
yes.
I didn't entirely stock it by myself, but I was a lot more involved in the process. We had a guide assigned to us. From Wyoming Arms, John from Wyoming Arms. He was phenomenal on the private ranch that we were hunting on, which is owned by one of the commissioners, Mike Schmidt, who's a phenomenal guy from Wyoming. And he is, and it was just really wonderful. Like, he was able to help me spot and stock, which is very different from what I've done in Virginia. I've sat in blinds in Virginia. That's kind of what you do. But
in a blind, right.
You kind of, and probably in Wyoming or in Iowa too, you guys do a lot of spot and stalking because those opportunities present themselves. So there's probably people who do blind hunting. Right. In Wyoming, they're really keen on, you have to go and get it. Like, it's your private land hunting experience isn't going to be easier. You can't just simply call it and then you shoot it and you go. Some of our hunting party learned the hard way that you can try to call deer all you want, sit in the blind, you won't get results. So I think all of us who had success in the field, which was like 90%,
right,
a little bit of spotting and stalking, which was fun. I had a lot of discipline. I wasn't nervous, and it all just came together. After the first attempt, I wasn't comfortable shooting because there was a deer behind. So I was like, I got to readjust. I got to move, and I got to make sure that there's not going to be any deer in the vicinity. And then when I reprogrammed and readjusted, I was able to find one perfectly broadside. The head was a little covered by the tree, but like the shoulder and everything was perfectly broadside. I took the shot and bam and wham and done. And it was delivered. So it was really exhilarating. I wasn't crying. I got a little teary-eyed when I took my first pheasant, because that was my first animal of consequence.
Right.
But when I was a little more calm, I was grateful and appreciative, of course, with animals you take. But I wanted to be calm, because if I got too emotional, I knew I would probably fidget, make a mistake, a missed shot. So I was like, you got to be calm. You got to be measured. And that's kind of what I did. But that's kind of my hunt in a nutshell. But it's an exhilarating feeling, and hopefully I can get more big game animals. I did get a hog last year in Georgia, but it darted off and I wasn't able to find it. In Georgia was able to track its remains after the fact. So there's a skull of my...
you got that at least. There you go. Yeah. With hogs, there's way plenty more of those. I mean... Yeah, every Game and Fish Commissioner or Department of Natural Resource I know of where they have feral hogs says, kill them, please kill them, kill all of them, pretty please, just kill them, because they're horribly destructive and they're invasive. And I've seen a statistic that to keep a population of feral hogs flat, not reduce their numbers, but keep them flat, you got to kill 60% of the population every year. Because some of the styles have 3 litters a year. So to keep the population from increasing, you got to kill 6 out of 10. And nowhere is doing that. Nobody's able to do that. So whack feral hogs with impunity. Yes.
Yeah, they proliferate and procreate incredibly fast, as you mentioned. I think my client said in Georgia, he's seen like 3 or 4 litters a year.
Yeah, it's warm enough in Georgia, they can do 4. Yeah.
Northern Georgia is great for hog hunting because they're just everywhere.
Mhm.
I've heard that they're starting to trickle into Virginia, so maybe there will be some opportunities. I know they're destructive, but like I partly wish that they would come so like some of us can help cull them.
me, volunteer. Yeah, it's a little too cold in Iowa. The ground gets frozen up here. Thank goodness I don't know. They could probably still find enough stuff laying on the surface, but as far as I know, there are no confirmed populations of feral hogs in Iowa, and nobody up here wants them.
They're like 6 million across the country. I think where the population's Texas, probably more south.
Oh yeah, Texas is covered up.
Too, but they're probably going to start migrating probably to Virginia at some.
Yeah, they'll go as far as the habitat's friendly. They'll go. Yeah.
What was it? Tennessee and Kentucky have some too. I think Tennessee has some wild hogs. Kentucky, I may be incorrect in that point, but Tennessee is starting to have some monster hogs, which is crazy to believe that. But yeah, no, it's really good to finally join the club of, I wouldn't call myself a big game hunter, but to finally get a big game animal.
Well, if you've got a deer on the ground, you're a big game hunter.
Yes. Now yeah. I can wear that badge with an honor.
You're an adult onset big game hunter, but you are in fact a big game hunter.
No, people give that term a lot of flack, but I actually kind of like it. It's not like you separate yourself from other hunters, but if you're new and you want to wear that new label proud, you should. And it's a scientific appropriate term to describe people in these esteemed legacy media outlets like take to it very kindly, like, oh, an adult onset hunter, this is so fascinating. And now everyone's covering. Pew Research poll is very fascinated by the topic. Wall Street Journal has very, I would say, adeptly covered the topic at length from field to fork programs. And I was just so curious and fascinated by hunters, and they recognize the role hunters play in replenishing conservation dollars. So we should celebrate it. And any way that all of us can do it, like I'll do it, from my own personal firsthand experience. I like to bring on people who talk about it. You guys at Brownells can do it. You guys elevate a lot of influencers and you highlight hunters, recreational shooters. So we just got to keep replenishing and putting content out there about how multifarious the outdoor industry is. Right.
And one of the things I'm very aware of too is the R3 initiative to recruit, retain, and reactivate. That's why it's called R3s, recruit, retain, reactivate more and more hunters, because unfortunately every year the number of hunters keeps going down, and lots of agencies are realizing, hey, our Pittman-Robertson dollars are going to go away if we don't get more folks hunting. So there's lots and lots of opportunities out there. I can't think of a more natural activity to do. Human beings, whatever your belief system is, we are kind of sort of top of the food chain. We do eat meat. Some of us make the conscious decision to not. That's fine. Whatever you're going to do, that's fine. But if you're going to eat meat, why not immerse yourself in the entire process? And as you had discovered too, for me personally, anytime I take a bite of meat that I've personally wrested from nature myself, if you will, I've gone out, I've become part of the nature, I participate directly in the food chain. I have done the hard work of processing the animal, of tracking the animal down, of trying to blend in with the environment enough to actually take the animal. It just tastes better, in my opinion. Maybe I'm just over creating stuff in my head, but I think it just flat out tastes better.
That's why the expression hunting tastes good is
yes.
A lot of people.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, the processing process, I will say, like, I used to probably be afraid of seeing so much blood, but I just got over it. I was just like, I'm being careful. I'm not going to cut my fingers. And this has a great end result. So you gotta be a good trooper. You gotta pull through with it. You gotta get your hands dirty, get them bloody. And it's going to have a good return on investment with the harvesting, taking the kills.
Oh, yeah.
All that. So yeah, no, it's an all-encompassing thing. And I think people are now starting to understand that because, I mean, remember the meat scare earlier in the pandemic. I remember so many buying meat.
I've seen some articles that more and more people took up hunting as a result of that.
Yeah, because they were worried about the facilities being tainted. There was, I think it was a surge in the price of beef. It was up to ludicrous prices. People were worried about whether the facilities were contaminated. So it was just kind of interesting.
Here in Iowa, there were some meat processing plants that shut down for a while because of COVID outbreaks. So yeah, very local. Yeah.
So that fear was real about like, oh gosh, if my meat is tainted, how am I going to get this source of protein? So I probably have to pick up hunting now. And maybe I admonished it in the past, these observers say, not me personally, but probably these naysayers who admonished hunting now are like, we see the appeal to this. And it's going to be really interesting to see what Fish and Wildlife Service and the other experts come out with in terms of the growth of hunting. Are we going to sustain those people, like you said, with R3? The recruitment has been great. Are we going to retain them? And are we going to reactivate people who perhaps were displaced or perhaps fell away from the activity? So that's going to be something that all of us, and like you, I'm also in communications as well for my main job. And something that I love about Professional Outdoor Media Association, kind of our media home base and the organization at hand there, we talk about these topics. We talk about how to counter things, how to portray things positively in hunting and shooting sports. Do you think organizations like POMA are going to continue to grow? And what's the essential need for organizations like that? And do you think can they improve upon existing work?
Get more and more numbers, and also get younger and younger. Even more folks who are more, for example, in my household, we don't have TV anymore. We don't have any TV. Anything we watch, we do have a big screen TV. We don't have a cable service. Everything we watch is streaming. Everything, it's all digital. We don't have satellite, we don't have cable. We don't even really get local channels. If I want to look up what's going on locally, I just go to the website, right? And people are moving more and more and more and more and more and more and more. I mean, there's even the breaking story coming out that Hollywood's concerned that Netflix is going to take over Hollywood, right? I'm sure you've seen those articles. It's going to totally disrupt and redo the film industry. In fact, you're seeing major motion pictures that are being released Netflix first. You're starting to see some movies that are made for specifically Netflix release, and maybe they'll do it in a theater. But the Outdoor Media Association, and not just POMA, I mean everybody involved in outdoor media needs to keep looking younger, more digital, I think, figure out ways to capitalize on digital, figure out more ways to get the positive message out there. And I'm going to go ahead and touch my Bureau of Propaganda flag when I say that. I'll talk about that in a second. But more ways to get the positive message out there that the outdoor shooting sports are fun, they are safe, they're empowering. I can't think of anything more empowering than being able to be responsible for your own supply of protein. I mean, if you can go out into nature and bring back food, and you were talking about the field dressing aspect. One of my favorite memories is about 7 years ago. I was giving my son his first lesson on digestive tracts because he was helping me clean pheasants in the backyard. So, hey, son, you want to see what an esophagus is? Here you go. All right, here's how it hooks into the stomach and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we're doing an anatomy lesson with cleaning a pheasant. But I think there's the fields are ripe unto harvest for that sort of thing. And yeah, I think it behooves all of us to find ways to make more and more connections and get more and more involved and get more folks participating.
Yeah, and the importance of sharing content too. I think sometimes people are really stuck on their little hovels, like they don't want to ruin or tarnish their Instagram feed. So I encourage everyone who is watching and listening, like if you want to elevate,
right,
like don't just stick to your little kind of ecosystem, like share in a story on Instagram, share on Facebook. I try to do my best to do that too, because I know how frustrating it can be when you put out something phenomenal and people don't react to it. So anytime I see or interesting content, I make it incumbent upon myself to share it in some capacity, whether it's a retweet on Twitter, outright sharing. And that's something that can go a long way too, especially to kind of bypass any changes to algorithms. Not so much suppression, that's a concern too, but I think
absolutely a concern, yes.
Certainly suppression, but I think also just organically it's really hard because the model now favors those who use paid ads as well. So you kind of have that working again.
They make more money that way, right? Of course it does.
If you can kind of overcome those algorithmic challenges and share things organically, you can still get a lot of engagement. I've seen that personally on my Facebook. That's been kind of hard to grow, but when you share organically, then you can still reach more people and kind of overcome those challenges. But I challenge anyone listening and watching to share content that you like. Don't just simply create a fancy feed. Like try to elevate others, because it's more than just like, are you getting enough likes, or are you getting this or these sponsorships? We want to have a greater purpose somewhat to our social media curated feeds. We want to inspire people to go hunting or go fishing or partake in shooting sports. Instagram has kind of grown for me in the last year, which is phenomenal. But sometimes it's kind of hard because you're like, if I don't post anything with me in it, it doesn't get as much engagement. Or do I post myself? Do I do this? So I have to weigh a little bit there
Right.
and find the right
Right.
time out.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Things now are like prime time for engagement. I've started to notice, or like delicious food or something of that nature. So you kind of have to twist and tweak your strategy. But it is still possible to kind of have a really fun social media feed and inspire people to go outdoors. So yeah, that's an important takeaway. But it's so good that outdoor media or associations do exist. And I know with POMA, they're always asking me ideas like, how can we improve and how can we do this? I'm
Yes.
like, let's do more storytelling.
Yes.
Do more of this. And I know everyone gets bogged down. It's been a crazy time this last year, obviously.
Oh yes.
Our friends at POMA are wonderful. Like every year, I don't mind
Yes.
our renewal fee. Like I will happily do it because I know that I'll get something out of it by participating, by bringing in people, by participating in the different webinars that occur too. So it's definitely, we're going to see those type of organizations grow, especially as it kind of gets a little harder to do traditional media. I like what you said. I think digital is important. Doing things on YouTube, doing things on whatever other video platforms, Vimeo and alternatives, if you find that, directly posting on social media. So you can have kind of more of an impact by directly posting onto digital outlets. And I think that's something existing structures like in the outdoor channel type programming that's out there, they're going to struggle a little bit going forward with everything going streaming or everything going digital. That
could well be the case, and it'll remain to be seen which folks glom on and catch on to it and which folks don't. But yeah, we're really in a time of flux and change in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. Roy, this has been so much fun. We've had a wide-ranging interview. We've talked a lot about guns, conservation, and the like. How can people connect with you and Brownells?
The best way to check out Brownells is go to www.brownells.com. Also check out Brownells has extensive social media presences on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Believe it or not, we even got a TikTok channel.
My gosh, you got to be careful, my friend.
What's that?
You got to be careful with TikTok, Chinese spyware.
You know, the communists are spying on us. Yes. But we're out there. We're there because lots of young people are there too. And then for me personally, I already did the shameless plug Possum Fatback on IG.